And that's James. He's brand new up here. They all deserted you. They said it was a good talk, in spite of the fact they're walking out and not going to listen to it a second time. Let's see, James is from Scotland, you say, right? We got John, he's from Britain, and we're just getting all international. We've even got Brian, who's from Northwest Ohio. Anyway, Brian said he grew up in a place called West Unity, a town called West Unity. And I said, yeah, we're on the west side of Orlando, and we're Unity. And, he didn't know what he was being headed toward. Okay, we feel better in our music department having James and John. So, two of the disciples. Title is Spiritual Dance today, and what we're really talking about is our partnership with God in every aspect of our lives. And there's no better place to observe that than in motherhood. So I think it's the perfect subject for today. I mean, I don't think there's a mother out there who doesn't find the job description a little overwhelming. Okay, and there are times when you say, I don't know whether I'm up to this. There is so much going on, and part of motherhood is having to consult with that spirit within, that greater power, and know that, God, I need help on this one. You're going to have to help me through this. I want to do the best for my children. That's motherhood. So there's probably no other role where you work together in partnership with God more. So let's have all the mothers stand up and give them a real round of applause. Come on, all the mothers up. Congratulations. We appreciate the wonderful role that you play. Yeah, I'm going to make you stand up through the whole service. We celebrate Mother's Day because, well, we all know it takes a wonderful mother to give us a start in life, the start we need. And it's such dedication. Motherhood is a spiritual experience, too. It's something beyond just a role that we play. I've watched so many of my friends go through this spiritual experience. I've never actually been pregnant myself. But I watch them, they go in, and through pregnancy and then through the rigors of raising a child, all of which is part of this motherhood thing, it molds them. It makes them more than they were. They came out of this experience different people. It is a spiritual training unto itself. That type of commitment, which we used to think stopped after 18 years, and in this society doesn't stop until after 100. That commitment, it really does teach a deep and wonderful spiritual quality. So being a mother is, without a doubt, one of the spiritual paths. One of the paths that leads to awakening to the higher sense of who you are. And today I want to talk about spiritual awakening in general, because we all go through it. And there are levels to this awakening. There is that first level where we start to discover I'm a spiritual being. I'm allowed to ask for things. I'm allowed to pray and get results. Ask and ye shall receive. And as we awaken to ourselves on this level, we do a lot of saying, oh, I want this in my life. I want that in my life. I want this. And we find that we can ask, we can hold it, we can radiate a consciousness of it. And finally, we attract it right back into our lives. And it becomes this wonderful experience of ask and receive. And as I said a few weeks ago, when you got this one down, sometimes you're invited to step a little higher. And the next level of spiritual awakening is when it's not all about asking for what you want. It's about letting God do the choosing. In God's hands, I think, was the title of the talk. And it's saying, okay, I'm going to put this in God's hands and know something good will happen. I told you the story of my friend Terry, who could demonstrate anything and then all of a sudden couldn't. And we discussed the fact that she was going to have to work differently now. She was being asked to learn to put things in God's hands and accept what God brought into her life. I said to people who go through this phase, you say, and what do you want? And they say, I only want what God wants for me. They're almost scared to claim anything in particular. I was. It would blow up in my face. And so in these first two phases or levels of spiritual awakening, we're asked to develop two qualities that are polar opposites. One is to take command of your life, to use prayer to demonstrate what I want and what I need. And its polar opposite that we then get kicked into is to let go and let God. To not make the choices so much, to put it in God's hands and accept what God brings us. And when we've finally gotten there, we're like, okay, yeah, right, I'm so much better off than when I was making all the choices. It's in God's hands now. But eventually there's a point where you say, okay, I let go, I put it in God's hands, I don't do anything, and suddenly nothing happens. Used to be you let go and something wonderful came. And finally you're realizing you're being asked to pick up your will again and start participating. The first one is about taking command. The second level is about surrender, trusting God, turning it over to God. The third level, which I call co-creation, is where God asks you to take these two seemingly opposite skills and put them together. And because they are so opposite, that's quite a dance. You are in the dance of life. Do I take a stand? Do I let go and let be? Do I wait? Do I act? And you are constantly moving in coordination with the Spirit within you, with God. Co-creation is not about choosing your goals, and it's not about not choosing your goals. It's about working with God to choose your goals. It's about being a partner. It's about realizing that your life belongs, you're not in this alone. That there is a Spirit within you and it owns a piece of your life. In other words, this is not just my life, it is God's life also. And so in the end, we start working very closely with Spirit, listening for every impulse that we feel comes from that wiser Spirit that lives within us. Just as the mother may say, come on, inspire me, tell me what I need to do in this situation. We have that attitude towards everything we do in our lives. We realize my life is a group effort. It's not just me. It's God and me working together to create everything Now, in the early phases, we were quite willing to put God in charge as soon as we messed things up really badly. As soon as everything went haywire, it's like, okay, in the emergency, I need God to take over. In this phase, God's with us through all the little tiny things. We're working in coordination. And the reason I call it a dance, or the spiritual dance, is because it's really what we're doing. We're dancing with God. Now, many, many years ago, I took just enough ballroom dancing lessons to be dangerous. Any female who danced with me would understand what I meant by that. But in any case, if there's anything I learned in those few lessons I took, it's that dancing is about coordinating with your partner. And there's two different roles. Two different roles. There is the lead. Your job is to move and determine where the dance will go. And there's the follow. That's generally thought of as the female role, the follow. And your job is to feel the cues, to know which way you're going. Not just to be drug around the floor, but to actually move in coordination with what the other person is doing. You told me about Ginger Rogers, right? I mean, he's got so many jokes, it's ridiculous. But in any case, he said, you know, you remind me of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers when she was asked how it felt to be dancing with the man who was considered the best dancer in the world. She says, well, it feels pretty good because I know that I can do everything he can do except backwards and in high heels. And when I was in ballroom dancing, I had tremendous admiration for the female approach, the female partner side of it. You can get the cue and move and make it as if you are moving right there with them. You are coordinating perfectly. And in this dance of life, God is the lead. And we're all there to follow. We're there to do the follow. But the follow is not just being drug around the floor. The follow is feeling the cue and coordinating yourself with the partner. That's co-creation. That's when you realize God and I are creating this life. Now, in the first stage, you only pray for what you want. In the second stage, you are looking for your cues, but you're doing your part. You are putting your will in to create a good life. You are creating all kinds of things. You know, what can I have? You can have just about anything. You're doing your part, but you're always paying attention to the leading of Spirit within you, because in the end you realize, you're like me, I'm really glad that God's in charge of my life, because the further I go, the more I realize how I screw things up. Okay? I mean, I do not have all the information now, no matter how smart I think I am. There's always something I don't know. But Spirit knows. Spirit knows. And so if I trust Spirit as my partner who's in lead, I'll take those cues and I'll say, okay, life should go this, we'll take life this way. We'll go that way because a greater wisdom than I have personally is moving through me. The more you move into co-creation, the more you eventually arrive at that space where you're making your choices as a soul that is in partnership with God, rather than simply the petty desires of a personality. You are personality, but you are so much more soul. It gets covered up with personality. When Jesus talks about taking the basket off the light, he's talking about getting beyond that personality to the spiritual being that you are underneath all of that. And so soul, in harmony with God and God's will, is creating a wonderful life, a wonderful individual life, but as its contribution to the wonders of the whole. It's not out to beat the whole. It's not out to do better than everyone else around. It's out to create its own unique, beautiful life as its gift to the world. And you and God are doing that together. In 1 Corinthians 3, 9 and 16, Paul writes, we work together with God. We work together with God. Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? Do you not know that you are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwells in you? It isn't just you running this life, but the very Spirit of God lives inside of you. And you and the Spirit within are creating this life. When you know that, it opens up doors you never had before when you thought it was just you. And in Philippians 2:13, it is God who inspires you with the will to do the good things which you desire to do. It's God that inspires you to do these good things. You say, well, I want to have a good life, but maybe that's selfish. Well, hey, God is inside of you desiring a good life. This is you and God. We need to know that God's inspiring me in the direction I need to go. That God is always urging me toward my highest good. We say that, we know that. What that means is if you listen, those cues, those edges, those urges, God is going to be urging you if you can learn to listen to that Spirit within. Even in the little tiny stuff, we save it for the emergencies, and that means we're not very good when the emergency arrives. We need to be using it in every little thing. God needs to be our partner, inspiring us. It's as crazy as last night for me when I discovered about 9 o'clock that I had lost my Bluetooth for the 1,000th time. And it's just a little thing, you know. But I am addicted to not holding a phone to my ear, okay? So I'm going, I've got to have my Bluetooth. You know, I'll have to go buy another one if I've lost it because, you know, it's a small little thing and you can't push a button and make it squeal or say I'm here. It just is wherever it is. And so I searched the house, searched my clothes. You know, where is it? It's not where I usually keep it. You know, and I thought, oh my God, just before dark I was out working in the yard, watering the plants and doing this and doing the other. I probably leaned over and it came out of my pocket. I'm sure it's out there someplace. So the flashlights and I went to go out and walk the property. Okay, and I'm walking around trying to cover everywhere I've been, and I've pretty much covered all the area where I watered and all of that. And it doesn't seem to be out here either, you know. And I'm thinking, well, why don't you go up and go in the main house? I'm still down in the guest house. I haven't finished up the kitchen, and I'm not moving until the kitchen's done. So in any case, these days I lock the front door. So I arrive up there, and I thought, well, there's no reason to go in here. But why don't you just go in for a minute? I had this impulse. you need to go in. So I reach in the pocket to pull out my keys that'll open the front door, and pops onto the sidewalk my Bluetooth. Now, I had been in that pocket a half dozen times. Somehow I didn't feel it among the keys. But here's the deal. Before I walked out with my flashlights, I finally said to God, I am getting really dumb these days. I am losing stuff more often. I lay stuff down. I don't notice where I put it. I need some help on this. If I'm going to find this, I'm going to need some help. So please, whatever you can do, please inspire me, lead me, do whatever needs to be done. And so I walk around the property. I come up and I'm inspired to go in the front door, which I don't need to do because I wasn't in the house. And out pops the Bluetooth. I said, thank you, God. You need to know that you're in partnership for God with something as dumb as trying to find your Bluetooth. I am partnership with God in every aspect of my life. Every aspect. It is God who inspires you with the will to do the good things which you desire to do. You need to know God is leading me, giving me my cues, inspiring me which way to move in this dance. And the last scripture I'm going to do is Jesus, John 8:16. Jesus always taught best by example. He said, if I should judge, my judgment is true because I am not doing it alone, but I and my Father who sent me. Jesus knew his life was a group effort. And so should we, his disciples, know that too. Our life is a group effort. He knew it was him and God together. And because it was God and he, a wisdom that knows a whole lot more than the individual knows, it'll be true judgment. Because I am functioning in harmony with the Father within. And that's something we all learn in this stage of awakening that we call co-creation. Now, I understand that Linda promised you all in the email dance steps. So we're going to do steps. My list of steps. Steps for using your life to dance with Spirit as your partner. I suppose the very first step is to start affirming that. Affirmation is not magic words. It's a means of focus. When you affirm, God is my partner in everything I do, and you do it every day, and you do it throughout your day, you are keeping your mind focused on the realization that God is your partner. It's so easy to lose that focus. So we're going to affirm it over and over until we feel it, we know it. We can say, God, I lost the Bluetooth again. I realize it was a stupid thing to do, but I could probably use some help. Please inspire me with where I need to go and what I need to do. God is my partner in everything that I do. Let's affirm that together. God is my partner in everything that I do. Again, God is my partner in everything that I do. Do you not know that the Spirit of God dwells within you and is living this life with you? God is inside of me. I am not on my own out here. I can believe I am, but God is here with me. God is my partner in everything, not just waiting for the really bad stuff. God is my partner in everything. Let's affirm it one more time. God is my partner in everything that I do. And the second step, since we're doing dance, it has to be steps, right? Second step, constantly listen for guidance, even in your simple decisions. Constantly consult with Spirit. Consult with the senior partner. You're in that dance. If you stop consulting, if you stop listening for the cues from your partner, one of you is going to step on the other's feet. It's going to be a problem, okay? And you may even fall down, okay? You have to keep listening for the cues. Listening is such an important part of co-creation. Now, co-creation, once again, is not being drug around the floor. You're still going to have to make decisions. You're still going to have to do things. You're still going to have to act. But at each time you're consulting. Do I need to do something different? Do I need to go another way? Is this the way you want me to go? So you're essentially creating this dance partnership with the Spirit within. So, part of this listening to guidance is intriguing. At times, you've got to be willing to wait on inspiration. I got to do something now. And Spirit says, now you got to hold. Well, then you're going to hold. There are times, if you'll just wait a little while, it'll become very clear and you'll know which way to go. And it's worth waiting on clarity. But that's not always easy. Because sometimes what you're waiting on is a path that isn't at all what you thought you wanted to go do. Okay? There was a time in my life where the answer to all my discontent was to move someplace new. Okay? Left Miami, I moved to Venice, where at 30 years old, I was the minister of a church in a town where if anyone was under 65, you hit the brakes, you stopped and pointed and said, a young person. That was a weird combo. I enjoyed Venice when I was there. But we were there less than 2 years, and we decided, no, what we really need to do is I need to leave the ministry. We're going to go out to Colorado on my parents' property. We are going to go back to the land and live close to the land and very frugally. It's amazing how much money you can spend living close to the land. Went through our whole savings. That lasted 8 months. We barely got ourselves out of there. I went back with my tail between my legs to Venice, where I had a friend there who had an insulation business. And he had very nicely said, oh, come on back, we'll give you a job. Even if we make you chaplain of the company. He did not make me chaplain of the company. He took one look and said, you got the build to crawl attics. So I crawled attics for a while. And then finally, we found our place, settled in, all this moving to Fort Pierce. Now, I don't often mention this these days. It's ancient history to me now. But the first 6 months in Fort Pierce, I never hated a place more in my life. The church split on me, and my family disintegrated, and I ended up in a divorce. And I wanted to run. But I'd made up my mind. I'd moved so many times and from every frying pan into a new fire. And I finally said, okay, I had this agreement with God. I will not move until I have clear guidance. As soon as you tell me clearly I can move, I'm out of here. I put my roses in pots, not in the ground, because I want them to go with me, and I was leaving. And 12 years later, they were in those same pots. Occasionally, you're asked to wait. I waited 12 years for clear guidance. And when it came, it was to go someplace called Orlando. And he was right. It was worth waiting for. Truth is, Fort Pierce became my place. I built a real life in Fort Pierce, and eventually I was told it's time to move on. Are you willing to wait on guidance? Say, okay, I'll wait on guidance, but I got to warn you, there's two sides to this. This is a dance, it is a skill, it is not an equation you can apply to everything. Everything is a judgment call. Because just as at times listening for guidance means you got to be willing to wait for inspiration, there are other times when you get no answer and you ain't going to get an answer until you do something. Now you'll know the difference if you're listening. I knew I was supposed to wait. That's why I ended up there for 12 years. And it was a good 12 years. This is a better 26, but it was a good 12 years. But there are also times when you're not getting an answer and something needs to be done, and you know you're being asked, make the best decision you can and run with it. Do your part. And so you do. There's a time to surrender it to God and say, I'll accept whatever comes. There's a time to take a stand and say, we're heading in another direction. And no, I'm not supposed to go that way. And if you're listening, if you're in the dance and getting the cues, you'll know. So it is a learning process. Co-creation, mastering it is trial and error. Learning how to listen for the cues. Number 3, learn to harmonize with the divine. Learn to harmonize with the Spirit within you. And since the divine is moving through everything in the world, learn to harmonize with the world around you. So often, we think success is beating the tar out of your competitors. No. Success is not pushing the river. It's not beating your way to the top. In co-creation, success is expecting your good to unfold in a harmonious way. And maybe we start into this consciousness by just affirming harmony in our lives, period. I am in harmony. That's a different attitude than we normally carry. I am in harmony. You say, but there's lots of things in the world I don't like. Okay, fine, but you're in harmony with your world. You want to be in harmony with it all. Resist not evil. You don't want to be in a state of resistance that weakens you. You're not in your strongest state. You want to be in a state of harmony. It's in harmony that you are in partnership with God. I remember, I am in harmony. I consider that one of the strongest affirmations you can use. It's such a different attitude to what we normally experience life, the way we normally experience life. I mean, I remember when I took that, I have my affirmations I use for focus, and I would generally take one and really, you hone in on it until you feel the energy of what that means inside, and you try to make it a part of your normal state of consciousness over a period of time. So I was working with harmony, and I said, I am in harmony, probably hundreds, maybe thousands of times a day. I am in harmony. I'm trying to feel that. I was amazed at how quickly my life changed. You move into a state of harmony and the world around you seems to adjust. Things kind of start to rise. Good starts to happen more naturally in your life. You don't have to fight for everything you get. It gets offered. How intriguing. And while you're working with harmony, it's time to pay attention to the flow of life around you. You want to be in harmony with how things are flowing. So, you learn to harmonize with the flow. well, the flow is going to bring me something. Something's going to come out of this. I'm in harmony with what's going on if it's not what I was originally intending. However, as all things, there's an up and a down to this. There's a positive and a negative, and there's a step forward and a step back to this dance. So not only do you need to feel in harmony with the flow and able to go with it, but you need to be able to feel when the flow is going too far. When the flow of events in your life are taking you someplace that you really do not need to go. Now, sometimes, I didn't say not want to go, because sometimes your best blessings come from going where you don't want to go. But there comes a time when you'll sit there and you'll say, no, I need to take a stand. That's what this whole co-creation is about. Feeling when you need to let go and when you need to take a stand. There's a time for all of it. There's a time for everything under heaven, right? Ecclesiastes. Number 4, step 4. Listen for the inspiration as to how to create the best life that you can and boldly pursue your goals, knowing they are God's goals also. I'm going to come back to the caveat that's there at the end. It's a dance. Nothing holds true 100% of the time. But for now, we're going to deal with that. People say, well, what am I allowed to have if I'm serving the whole? You're allowed to have a really good life. You're allowed to succeed. You're allowed to create something wonderful with your life. This is what you give to humanity. God doesn't need you to give garbage to humanity. You can give humanity something wonderful by creating an absolutely beautiful life as your gift. So, how did that go? It is God who inspires you with the will to do the good things which you desire to do. Listen to what you really desire from the depths of your soul. What does a good life look like to you when you go deep down inside? And know this is God and I. I'm inspired to go to this goal and that goal, and we're doing this together. So, are you allowed to pray for things and create a wonderful life? Absolutely. But you have to do it knowing you're working with God and that this is God's desire too. And not that it's your job to talk God into this. But God, this really is better, think who you're talking to. So, pursue your goals boldly until God redirects you. And if you're redirected, redirect. Change directions. You'll know it. The cue will come through. And that leads us, that last caveat leads us to number 5. Develop unattached absolute investment in everything you do. You want me to explain that, right? I just stuck a lot of opposites together. Unattached absolute investment. What does that mean? What that means is whatever you're doing, no longer can you say, oh, it's just God, God's doing it all. Whatever it is you're doing, you do. You put your intensity into it, you are invested in it. I am invested in going this way. I have had instances where I knew God wanted me to achieve this goal. I have worked hard. We are there. We are within 10 foot of the end game. and guidance comes through and says, take a left. I'm sitting there looking. It's within reach. We're not going to do that. We're heading a new direction. And if you're really in partnership with God, you say, fine, we're going this way, and I am totally invested in this direction. See, what happens in the early days, we pray for things we want, and we get very attached to our goals. I want this. I want that. I'm asking you to be invested, but not attached. There is a difference. You have to give your whole self to whatever you're doing. But we're willing to go another direction the moment the Spirit within moves the dance that way. You go with Him. Your job is to give your whole to whatever's in front of you. But as God's partner, doing it backwards and in high heels. When God takes the dance another direction, you're completely there. So your deepest attachment is to serving the Spirit within. The goals are temporary. You're totally committed to each one when it's in front of you. But I'm willing to be redirected. At the time it was time to leave Fort Pierce, I used to say I was God in Fort Pierce. I could have done pretty much anything I wanted to do. And in the end, that was a hard move because the people there were not eager to see me leave. It was a betrayal of a marriage. But I knew it was time to go. I'd been told. Time to move on. And that's how it is in everything. You give it your whole, it becomes your baby. But when Spirit says go another direction, you do. That's how this stage, co-creation, partnership with God, it's how it works. Now, I always like to give one of the steps to the downside, so here we go. Realize God has a better idea, and it will eventually become clear when something you have wanted falls out of your grasp. That happens. Here we are in partnership with God. We think this wonderful thing is about to unfold. And all of a sudden, disappears. Lindsay was interviewing for jobs in advertising. She was interviewing with this agency that was a very high-powered agency coming out of California into San Antonio. All-woman agency, and she was into it. This is going to be great, you know. And she was one of the last three. And in the end, she knew it was she kind of looked over and says, I'm the best choice. And in the end, it went to someone else. It was just ripped right out of her grasp at the very last minute when she was so sure it was her. Out of 80 applicants, she was in that top 3. They hired, the one girl they hired, she said, well, she was pretty good. She was the other one that would have made a good person. Found out later they actually hired the other 2. This was a little bit deflating. But I was around when this happened, and I said, Lindsay, if this fell through, there's got to be something better. And a week or 2 later, she had fought so hard for that one. Another agency opened up. It was a local agency, but very outstanding reputation, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and she went in and she was hired almost without any effort. She kind of went through the processes. Yep, this one's yours. It was so harmonious, she wasn't sure it really happened. And she went to work and she said, wow, this is it. This is my place. This is wonderful. I didn't get that one I wanted. This is better. And she'd been there about a month when she got the call from the girl who got the first job, warning her, when they call you, they're going to want you. Don't come. You have no idea what torture they're about to put you through. And she says, I'm actually very happy where I am. God had a better idea. It didn't feel that way when it got jerked out of her hands. But she had to know. If something's jerked out of your hands, God will have a better idea, and eventually you'll see it. Eventually it'll arrive. Well, that leaves us at 7. I usually try to stop at 7, though sometimes it goes to 9 and 10. This is the end. The last one is meditate upon combining my will with God's will. That's part of what co-creation is. God inspires me to do the good things that I do. That my will and God's will are in harmony. Meditate on that until you can feel that my will, that the desires of my soul are coming out through me, and my soul is in perfect harmony with the Spirit within. Just meditate on that more and more until when you say God's will or my will, it's not an or. You realize my will is that God's will be fulfilled in my life. Well, if we wrap it up, God is within us as our partner in everything that we do. That we need to get. That's that level of awakening called co-creation. It's God and I doing it together. Realize your life is not yours alone. It belongs to God too. Life is a dance. And like all dances, the more coordinated we are with our partner, the more beautiful the dance becomes. And that's what creating a wonderful life is actually all about. That's co-creation. So let's close our eyes. Father, we give thanks that we are never alone. That your Spirit there within us is always with us. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear, that we can know thy leading and be thy perfect partners in this dance. And in doing so, create a wonderful life. That the world can be a better place. Because my life is there in it. Thank you, God. Amen. If the ushers will come forward, we'll prepare for our offering.